Okay, my friends, I'm going to show you some evidence. I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but this guy, Stefan Burns, he won't respond. He's talking about a close flyby of the asteroid, and he's a geophysicist. Well, he won't respond to me. And here you got to add this Randall Carlson. Same thing. I tried to get him, a hold of him. I think him and his brother both. CO2 comma found, big deal. These guys won't respond to anything that they can't respond to because they can't respond. I have the evidence, they have nothing. They have the floor, but I have the evidence. Well, okay, my friends, as promised, I'm going to try to get through to as many people as I can that are involved in this research. And this is the lead author of the paper, Joel Horowitz of Stony Brook University, New York. He's right down the street, basically, from me. And I would certainly welcome him to see my specimens and show them how I do business here. Now, they are looking for these sources on Mars. And they're seeing these leopard spots, which I agree, it does indicate life. Yes, no question whatsoever, but that's the kind of life I'm talking about is life. I'm talking about huge, gigantic creatures. And they're looking for extraordinary evidence is needed. Now, this is astrobiological claims, particularly those related to potential discovery of past extraterrestrial life require extraordinary evidence. Now, I'm going to try to get through to Katie Stack Morgan, but I wasn't successful at getting her email. So if anybody knows how to get through to her. When I did try to get to her, it came up saying that my line was not secure or whatever, but I think it is. I don't know. I have no idea. I just can't get through to her email. All right, so Perseverance Project scientists at NASA getting such a significant finding as a potential biosignature on Mars, and they want everything peer-reviewed. Yes, please peer-review the things that I have shown. That's what I've been asking for. So, but I think I can get through to this other guy who was the lead author because I was able to get through to his email, so I'm going to try that. Okay, I'm going to appeal to the highest power in the land, President Trump. Now listen to this. He's the one that launched this to get some understanding. It says the finding by Perseverance launched under President Donald Trump in his first term. So he wanted to find out the evidence. I'm presenting the evidence to you, Commander Trump. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. We need somebody to be in charge of this. This is ridiculous. This has gone on 10 years. They say it's the closest we have ever come to discovering life on Mars. I contacted NASA and said, all these things, you have to look at them in a different way. And I said, I have the giants here on Earth, which I do, and I had them DNA tested and CAT scan, all that. I presented that to NASA. And I showed the emails, and I have a whole list of emails like this, way beyond what I showed the other day. Now, I assume NASA's commitment to conducting gold standard science will continue as we pursue our goal of putting American boots on Mars' rocky soil. No, that's biology, my friends, and it's just as the way it is. There's nothing I can find that isn't biology. Bennu, Psyche, Comet 67P. The one that's coming in now. That's biology. They gas off when they get close to being cooked by the sun. They have to get hit with strong enough radiation. It literally boils the blood out of them. You want to see? Of course you do. Okay, here's another one. Lindsay Hayes is from NASA, Astrobiology Institute, and I've got her email, so I'm going to copy her in on this. Okay, this is the guy I originally contacted, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to contact him right now. He's going to be part of this whole package. For some reason, his email was no longer in here, but it is now. So I'm going to just say, to the NASA Perseverance rover stunning find may be Mars' first sign of life. This is what they claim. And these people are with NASA. And Joel Howard's in the Stony Brook. He's right down the street. I'd love to entertain him. Michael Zelinsky, which is the one I originally in 2016, in January 2016. Now at the end of 2016, Yale announces this big discovery, and that NASA funded them. Now, I'm just being straight out blunt. I said, I'm sorry to be blunt, but this is 10 years of denial to discuss or examine scientific specimens and cannot continue. The Bennu samples of the heart sarcomeres, and has the same phosphate membranes, well, it has the phosphate membrane surprise, which are membranes. Maybe I should be nicer about this. Don't you people have any anatomists or biologists or chemists? I'll probably reword that. Okay, my friends, I have been doing some pretty serious videos about the suppression of this evidence. In my opinion, it's being suppressed. It's not being allowed to be seen the way it should by scientists and by fiduciaries that are tasked with being honest and doing their job of investigating, which, as I show you, and I'm showing them, in my opinion, they're just not doing their job. So this is to all the people at NASA, Stony Brook Education, NASA, Derek Briggs, Lydia Tarhan, people at Yale. And this is about how they stunning new discovery on Mars and so forth. Well, I don't think it's stunning at all. The stunning stuff was what they found, the Curiosity, which I reported to Michael Zelinsky from NASA 10 years ago. And I also reported it to Derek Briggs, that the both of them, it's on Mars, it's the same stuff that's here on Earth. My stuff's CAT scan, DNA test, and all that. And I can show, and now what ended up was NASA somehow got hooked up with Derek Briggs, and a year later almost, Briggs posted this paper called Exceptional Preservation of Soft-Bodied Creatures Promoted by Silica-Rich Oceans. Basically the same paper that I did. Mine was fascia-facilitated fossilization, which was the one I sent to Derek Briggs. So this Curiosity pictures, I instantly knew they were giant biology, just as we have here, which was the problem. The giants really freaked them out. So I reported this to NASA and Yale, and NASA did fund Yale Derek Briggs shortly after that. They funded him to see if that was true. And Briggs basically repeated my claims, but he said it was just sand, and I showed it was mud. And he also said it was just slimy creatures. I got to put that in here. All right, so that's that. Now, so Briggs basically repeated my claims, but he said it was sand that coated all these slimy creatures. And I showed it was mud. It was mud fossils. I also had DNA-proven CAT scan humans, and some were giants. Briggs claimed only slimy little small things preserved. And it was because of this silica-rich oceans, which was because when we got impacted by a large object, it created a global flood. And that's because they agreed that this worldwide, the whole world was covered with these same creatures. They have no explanations for any of this stuff. And it's just as was written in the ancient texts, we had a great global flood. And it was supposed to wipe out all the creatures on the earth, and basically it did almost. Now, he's showing his paper was Exceptional Preservation Soft-Bodied Creatures by Silica-Rich Oceans. It's basically the same paper as mine, except mine was mud, and I expounded on it much more clearly than he did. Now, teachers and scientists must examine evidence which we have, like Bennu samples. I'm not going to just forget about my stuff for the moment. Bennu samples been here almost 2 years. And I contacted them at one of these universities, and the one that's handling it right now is it's just silly. They just don't want to know the truth, as far as I'm concerned. That's my opinion. As teachers and scientists, they must examine the evidence, like the Bennu samples, which I have all this stuff down here that I'm sending them. The Bennu samples are sarcomeres. I've shown this over and over and over and over and over. And it's this is serious now. This is very serious. Now, I gladly speak to anyone or all of them at once. And we have a vast number of people, and we all need to speak up because we're just being taken to the cleaners on this one, my friends. So my best advice is to engage. I mean, you know, it's really started to look very, very, I mean, just terrible. Disgusting. That the people that we had trusted to be the educators and to work in our interest, as far as my opinion is, I see no interest in helping anything other than themselves. And the arrogance is just, you could cut it with a knife. So this is the NASA email document that I sent to, well, let me show you the things that I didn't send. Hold on. All right, here's one of the documents. This was the one I sent to Derek Briggs. This was March 4th, 2015. All right, and I had been doing this much longer than that. But nobody would talk, but finally I got a hold of him. And I said, I'm working with wet platy silicate. That's what he's talking about. Silicate mud rocks, which are these. But they're bones. They're just not rocks. And then I went on to explain the whole thing to him about the calcium, about the reactivity and the percolates and all of that stuff. Nucleophilic invasion. I had all this stuff done already. And that was March 2015. And I also sent this to NASA. And this was January 2016. I didn't get a hold of NASA until I couldn't get around with anybody else, and I knew they had this stuff up on Mars. And I sent them the Mudfossils, how this happens, Mudfossils by the numbers, fascia-facilitated fossilization. These were the DNA tests. CAT scans. This was, I don't know, a video that I sent to go along with it. And I said, I'm a fossil researcher, and We'll explain a little bit of this. People don't want a whole big thing going on. But I said I have 3 DNA tests, 7 CAT scans, experts, chemistry, lab recreation of the process, nucleophilic invasion. Do not dismiss this, please, as a scientist. Now, that was sent to Michael Zielinski at NASA. And like I say, that was 2016 in January. So by the end of January, Briggs puts his paper out. Hold on. Yeah, this is the same thing. Silica-rich oceans. They had no explanation for how come silica was so dense at that time. It came up from the bottom of the ocean because it's heavy. Silica is 2.5 times heavier than water. It was an ooze, and it still is. If the Earth was wrenched, it would come up to the surface and supersaturate the oceans, which it did. Now, this was at the end of 2016. So I had already given Briggs this information for well over a year. And NASA apparently must have contacted them because NASA paid them to do this research, to Derek Briggs and, you know, his crew there. And here it was right here. Whoops. It's a NASA exobiology grant. NASA. It goes on about NASA a lot. Support. National Science Foundation. Postdoctoral fellowship. Grant from American Philosophical. They nursed this thing like unbelievable. They milked this thing, in my opinion. NASA, which I sent to them, they paid Yale. All right, Tara, Briggs, NASA, complex life at NASA. This is just not right. That's just not right. Not in my opinion. So don't forget, that was sent back in January of 2016. It was at the end of 2016 that Yale put their paper up. You know, I think it was reviewed somewhere in the middle of 2016, and then by October or something they released it, something like that. You can look up the details. But I had certainly give them, I contacted Briggs long before that. Now all of these things are validated. All these things I've been showing about this being heart muscle sarcomeres, membranes. You know, if they should have somebody there that knows anatomy and biology. And, you know, this is kind of deep inside, but I go as deep as you can get in everything I do. I don't skim the surface. I do my fiduciary duty to stand behind the things that I say and I can't claim. I don't charge anybody for anything, so I don't really have a duty to them. I can speak anything I want, but I can tell you what, the people that are doing this and being paid to do this for society, I would say they have some form of a duty to look at this and say, what's that? How come this looks like a heart? How come it's loaded with the metals and so forth that are in blood? And how come this looks like heart sarcomeres? And why is there DNA and RNA and clay and membranes? And why does it look like a heart? You see that? That's a heart valve. That's a heart valve. And that is the big one, the tricuspid, I believe they call that. And these are the valves that pump in and out. This is, if it isn't understood, it's who's at the handle on the wheel here? It just doesn't make any sense. I've shown this pops off. It's just glued basically onto there. And you get down to this. This is what the heart looks like. And I, you know, like I say, I've talked to a lot of anatomists. Well, not a lot, but enough that it's just absolutely certain what's going on there. Even like the Morse code. There's no explanation for that. I can tell you what it is. This is skin that's pinched together. That skin is pinched together. This skin is stretched. And these are the little collagen fibers. They're a little tougher. The balls are tough as hell. The other ones can squish and this, the balls are just anchors. So these here have not pulled, but you can stretch this and stretch that. This is pretty much about what it would look like unstressed. And that's called the Morse code. No explanation for that whatsoever. Well, I just happen to have one, because there it is right there. That's the Morse code. And it's been eroded. It was pinched together in one section, another, and it's pulled and stretched. And these are the Mogi marbles, which are identical to the Mars blueberries. And this is what it looks like in the human body, or in probably every creature just about. This is tiny stuff. It's this here. And this is what's in your, right under your skin, so it can go jump around and stretch and pull and all that. And this is skin too. And that's the flesh right under the skin. And that flesh is eroding away, and the balls are just falling out of here. These just spontaneously erupt from nothing. They're being eaten by moss. And everybody in the northern areas where it's freshwater frozen skin is thawing out, and they're seeing these are green. These are real. Well, hold on a second. All right, you see that? Those are the interstitium balls. They have a lot of flesh still left on them. You know, biological material that these things are eating, and they roll all together in a certain direction because they want to change. They don't have any roots, so the ones at the bottom want to come up to the top. And these are all over. I'm getting reports now of people from Iceland, I think Greenland, all over the place. That as the body becomes exposed from global warming, they're just like they're taken out of the freezer, and the biology's growing on it. Just like you took something out of the freezer, nothing is fine, it's perfect. Nothing's growing on it. You take it out, put it on a counter for a couple of weeks, and you got yourself a mess like this. And this is what they look like inside. There's the balls right in here. The ball is very small, and I believe it probably had about this much edible stuff on it. But once it gets to the very center, ball is pretty small. And they roll like that. And you can see this is rolled up. This is going to keep going and going and going and going and going. So this bottom part will come up this way and grow. Then they get fully grown, and under they go. So that's the way I'm seeing it. I think I have the evidence that it has to be taken into account. And these are the people that are making the statements and teaching the kids and taking all the money from the government and not paying attention. This is up on Mars. That's muscle fibers. It's giant creatures. Yes, it's what it is. As a scientist, you have to examine what it is. And then, oh no, it just looks like that. Well, no, it doesn't just look like it. It is what it is because it is what it is. Now, it can be tested. And I have tested the ones that I have here in my shop. And they have these right here. They just went up and got it from Bennu. That's muscle from a heart. And this is also muscle from a heart. Same stuff. And these are phosphate layers. Phosphate surprise, they said. And those are the sarcomeres. And it's got all the amino acids. It's got the uracil. It's got the DNA, RNA. I think there's like 16,000 organic molecules. And they say, yes, they don't disagree now that it's all biology. But they say, well, maybe it's going to come here and bring life to Earth. No, it's a heart in space. And all the ancient people on Earth said there was battles in the heavens. And everything I have found, let me show you Comet 67P. It's a hip joint. These things are enormous. This right here is a heart. It's 177 miles across. And the creatures I show on Earth fit the same size. They're still here on Earth. Typhon? Typhon's over 1,000 miles long. I'm just sorry. That is what is here, and they have to deal with it because they are selling truth. All right, you understand what I'm saying? They are supposed to be our fiduciary leaders selling truth to the masses and doing their fiduciary obligation of paying attention to things that are put in front of them. This is my opinion. Not having any response to this, and then have Yale make it look like it's just slimy little sea creatures. It's just not right, in my opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and send this to them, all those people, and let's see what we get for responses. And I want you to start talking up, because if you make a presentation correctly to your professors and they just laugh at you or whatever they do, they have to respond as a fiduciary that is responding to questions about the things that they're presenting versus other things that show that they're not true. My stuff shows what they're saying is not true, in my opinion. Now, if they can come up and say, oh, no, that just looks like it, and that just looks like it, and that just happens to have DNA, and it just happens to look like sarcomeres, and it just happens to have membranes on it, and it just happens to have muscle, and it just happens to look like a heart, and it just happens to have all the chemistry. No. That becomes a point of where you lose faith in your teacher. You have to, and I think you already have. And if you haven't, you missed it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and send this off. Let's see what we get. We got to change this. Somehow we got to get this changed. And in my opinion, it's serious. I'll leave it at that. Thank you. I love you all.